Thanks so much for joining us for Face the State. I'm Brittany Bailey in for Tracy Townsend. The work on the Intel plant in Licking County is now in a new stage. President Biden made a visit for that official groundbreaking. The $20 billion investment, the largest in state history, is located in Licking County. Now, when the two factories known as fabs open in 2025, the facility will employ 3,000 people.
You know, it's fitting to break ground for America's future here in Ohio. Think about it. There's kind of a tradition here. The Wright brothers, Neil Armstrong, John Glenn, they defined America's spirit, a spirit of daring and innovation. Pat Chase laid out Intel's vision that builds on that legacy. A brand new $20 billion campus, 7,000 construction jobs, union construction jobs, 3,000 full-time jobs that will pay an average of $135,000 a year, and not all of them are built. And here's a critical piece. Intel is using a project labor agreement for this investment. For the folks at home, these are agreements that contractors, subcontractors, and union put in place before construction begins. They ensure major projects are handled by well-trained, well-prepared, highly skilled workers.
10 TV's Kevin Landers spoke with Ohio State Senator Jay Hottinger, who represents this area, about what this project means for Ohio and the local economy and some of the concerns that come with it.
In terms of the biggest concerns you have about a project like this, obviously people who live in Johnstown are concerned about how their way of life is going to change. This is going to go from an agrarian community to an industrial community. There's also concerns about having enough Ohioans to fill all the jobs. Where do you land on those?
So look, I think this is a game changer. And are there going to be some pains, and there's going to be some growing pains? Absolutely. I think whenever there is change, some of those things are going to occur. There's going to be changes in infrastructure. Some 2-lane roads right now will be 5-lane or 6-lane roads in the future. But the acreage that Intel has purchased, they have purchased all of that in anticipation of growing. So it's not like they're going to be coming in and purchasing, new or additional lands. This is already in the vicinity of the New Albany Business Park. And so there's already a lot of neighbors, when I say neighbors, corporate neighbors that are there in that vicinity. I think in a decade, there could be 7,000 or 8,000 Intel employees there. But I forget what's in the New Albany Business Park now. I want to say there's like 26,000 or something. So this is significant, no doubt about it. But I don't think that it's going to have a significant adverse effect on the families that live nearby. I think there's some challenges, and when leaders and communities step up and meet those challenges, I think the potential and the upside is really significant. And I've had a chance to visit a couple of Intels, Kevin, and they're really good corporate citizens. They're great neighbors. I went off campuses and started talking to people. And if people knew that Intel was even in the vicinity, their reaction was that they're great corporate citizens. They're great partners in our community. And so my biggest concern right now, candidly, obviously we have some infrastructure that's going to have to be put in. It's going to be a couple $2 billion. There's going to be a lot of orange barrels. There's going to be a lot of construction, and there's inconveniences that come with that. But I think longer term, my biggest concern is housing, and where are people going to live? It's not just Intel, but it's their suppliers. I know that there's at least 15 suppliers that are already looking at Central Ohio, looking to follow Intel to Central Ohio. And it could be as many as 30 or 40 suppliers that are coming to Ohio.
That was Kevin Landers reporting. The money from the CHIPS Act played a big role in Intel's future in Ohio. This past week, the White House released a strategy on how the $50 billion in CHIPS Act funding will be spent. Now, the main goal is to establish domestic production of leading-edge semiconductors. Right now, the U.S. makes 0% of the world's supply. Now, here's a breakdown of how that $50 billion will be spent. $28 billion will go to large-scale investments in manufacturing. $10 billion will go to increasing the amount of chips made in the U.S. that are used in vehicles and medical devices. $11 billion will go into U.S. research and development into semiconductor technology. Now, the timing of all of this funding is still being worked out, but the U.S. Secretary of Commerce said that the impact is happening right now.
I can't answer you how quickly exactly a specific chip is going to come. But the point is, you're already seeing it. Global Wafers made an announcement, $5 billion investment in Texas. So I'd say immediately, the effects are immediately being felt.
Franklin County Commissioner Erica Crawley says the CHIPS Act money will also bring tech jobs to women in Central Ohio.
In Ohio, less than 3% of folks in tech are women and women of color. And so as we look at the CHIPS Act, or we look at how Intel is coming and what that's going to provide for Central Ohio, we want women, especially women of color, to be able to access those jobs.
Now, to bring Intel to Central Ohio, the state dished out plenty of cash and incentives. It took nearly $2 billion to close the deal, and that money comes from taxpayers. Ohio will pay $600 million in direct cash in the form of a grant that is conditional on Intel finishing the plants. $600 million is being spent on infrastructure. That number can be broken down into two big categories, roads and water. Now, there is a need to upgrade streets getting to the plant. Some $205 million is being spent on local and state streets. There's also a need for new water lines and water treatment plants specifically tailored to the process of building a semiconductor plant. And that is costing around $400 million. It's estimated Intel could get upwards of $600 million in tax credits, depending upon the number of people employed in Central Ohio. Well, Intel also is part of the Building a Better Ohio Forum in Washington, D.C. this past week. The meeting was part of a new initiative by the Biden administration to bring state leaders to D.C. Ohio leaders discussed how funding in 4 major federal projects will be used. Now, all 4 were created by the Biden administration, and those include the American Rescue Plan, the Inflation Reduction Act, the Infrastructure Bill, and the CHIPS Act. Franklin County Board President Erica Crawley also spoke at that panel. She touted major programs created by the Franklin County Commissioners. The commissioners have used $250 million on community recovery, $22 million on child care services, $12 million on workforce programming, and $9.5 million for the Mid-Ohio Food Collective. Crawley also mentioned rental assistance for teachers and child care providers.
We cannot afford to lose any more child care educators and teachers. We don't want them to leave the workforce. We want them to stay in the workforce. And until we can increase wages in the state of Ohio, that is how we're supporting them.
The city of Columbus also was mentioned during the forum. The city used American Rescue Plan funding, with $24 million going to human services, $5 million in small business support, $39 million in rental services, and $22 million in youth programs to keep children away from crime. We checked in with Mayor Andrew Ginther after he was part of that discussion in D.C.
And we're contemplating a partnership for a dramatic expansion of after-school programming to make sure young people get what they need, they stay on the right track. We've got them back in school now. Now we need to invest in them and make sure they realize they have a great future for success in Columbus and Central Ohio.
Mayor Andrew Ginther also talked about how this money is helping with affordable housing options. Columbus City Council President Shannon Hardin also was in D.C., and Hardin says one local program that is gaining plenty of attention from the White House is Columbus Promise.
Our young people are prepared for the jobs of the future. They will have the credentials, the background, the education that they need to be successful in our city in the future in Columbus. So we're really excited about that, and the White House is extremely excited.
The Columbus Promise was announced back in November and is aimed at providing tuition-free education at Columbus State Community College for Columbus City Schools graduating seniors. This past week, the city of Upper Arlington sent a strong message to anyone who tries to interfere with the November election. Council passed an ordinance to make it a crime to harass an election official. 10 TV's Kevin Landers explains why this issue isn't just a concern locally, but on the national level as well.
Perhaps nowhere in the United States did poll worker threats make more news than in Georgia, when then President Donald Trump called that state's Secretary of State an enemy of the people when election results of 2020 didn't go his way.
Someone's going to get hurt, someone's going to get shot, someone's going to get killed.
Upper Arlington City Council member John Coolwitz says poll worker threats is a real problem and has proposed a poll worker protection ordinance to protect election workers where he votes.
There have been reports from other Ohio counties of poll worker harassment in the past couple of years. The president of the National Association of Secretaries of State reported 2 weeks ago that they are seeing increased levels of threats to election officials.
Under the proposed ordinance, the crime of poll worker harassment would be punishable with a misdemeanor and no less than 3 days in jail. Harassment is defined under the measure as communication
that would threaten, harass, coerce, menace, abuse an elections official or a poll worker in the performance of his or her duties.
We spoke with the commissioner of the U.S. Election Assistance Commission about the issue of election worker harassment nationally.
This is something that we've seen obviously growing out of, former President Trump's big lie and sort of the disinformation campaigns. And it's a real problem, and it's taking a toll on the public servants who run our elections.
A Brendan Center for Justice survey earlier this year found 1 in 5 poll workers was very or somewhat unlikely to continue serving through 2024. Upper Arlington City Council believes its poll worker protection ordinance will prepare itself for what's shaping up to be a series of contentious elections.
What we do know is that we have a fairly intense series of elections coming up, not just this fall in Ohio, but next year there's likely to be a initiative for reproductive rights on the ballot. And the year after that, in 2024, there's going to be what is obviously going to be a very intense presidential election. So it's not meant to, this is not speaking to the conduct of one side or the other. It's speaking to everybody. If you're thinking of disrupting an election, don't come to Upper Arlington, because we take it very seriously here.
That was Kevin Landers reporting. The campaign trail is starting to heat up in Ohio already. On Saturday, former President Donald Trump will come to Youngstown to campaign with Senate candidate J.D. Vance. That event is September 17th at 7 p.m. And the latest polling shows Republican J.D. Vance is ahead of Tim Ryan by just less than 5%. We talked with both candidates and asked why they deserve your vote.
I think we need to get back to basic common sense in this country. We need to stop going after the police and start going after violent criminals. We need to close the southern border so we stop the flow of fentanyl coming into our country, killing people in Ohio. And we really got to get the inflation under control.
We're working our rear ends off to earn people's votes. And that same mentality will be when I get in office. We're going to work hard, grind it, work in a bipartisan way. Everyone's going to be welcome into my office. Everybody's voice will be heard.
Former President Trump officially endorsed Republican Governor Mike DeWine in his bid for re-election. Governor DeWine tweeted that he and Lieutenant Governor John Husted are grateful for former President Trump's support. His Democratic challenger Nan Whaley responded, saying after avoiding being seen with the former president for years, he's happy to take his endorsement now that he needs it. The most recent polling does show DeWine is ahead of Whaley by 15%. Right now in Ohio, teachers can be armed in the classroom. So up next, we're hearing from the superintendent of a local school district that is considering making that security change. And new COVID-19 booster shots are now available in Ohio. We're verifying if you need one. Right now, school is back in session in Ohio, and at least one district is considering allowing teachers to be armed in the classroom. We're talking about Benjamin Logan schools in Logan County. 10 TV's Richard Solomon talked to district leaders there about this decision.
Just 10 miles outside of Bellefontaine.
We're kind of out in no man's land.
You'll see more cornfields than people, but on this soil lays the framework that builds the future.
And it's about 1,700 kids, grades K through 12.
John Shue is the superintendent of Benjamin Logan Schools. In the near future, this small district may make a big decision, a decision Shue believes will make it safer.
I never thought when I was a superintendent 21 years ago that I would even be considering something like this. But times have changed, and a dose of reality is that if it can happen in all the rest of these small school districts around the country, it can happen at Benjamin Logan. And I just want to make sure that if that time comes, that we're going to be as prepared as possible to protect innocent kids and innocent teachers.
At the start of the summer, the governor signed House Bill 99, a bill allowing school employees who complete specific training to carry a handgun on school grounds. Now, it could be reality in Benjamin Logan schools. Shue says the board has not yet approved the response team, but has approved the required training. He says the state must also approve the curriculum. Shue says 22 staff members in the district, that's teachers, cooks, secretaries, have volunteered. It's a possible safety measure the district could have, but something Shue hopes they'll never have to use.
The most important thing is to guarantee to parents that their kids will come to school safe and go home safe.
The possibility of having an armed response team within the schools, to Logan County Sheriff Randall Dodds, simply makes sense.
Oh, absolutely.
The training includes proper gun safety, trauma response, first aid, de-escalation, and other areas of safety. On average, the sheriff says he can only have about 3 deputies working a day in Logan County. And he says it takes nearly 15 minutes to get to the schools from Bellefontaine.
Children they're precious to us, and they're vital, and it's utmost importance. Probably the number one thing that we should be really responsible. It's way up on that list.
The district has hired 2 additional school resource officers to be placed in its 3 schools. They've had 1 SRO in the past. This is a decision that some parents agree with.
The quicker somebody can take out that threat, the more people are going to be saved.
This is Todd Shields, Lance Predmore, and Cedar Schneider. They all have children and grandchildren throughout the schools. The sheriff says school members who are being considered for the response team have been working with sheriff deputies. This is not a part of the required 24 hours of training that employees will have to have. Sheriff Dodds and Shue say if the board approves the response team, those who are part of it will have hundreds of hours of training.
Hopefully it'll just all be a deterrent and we'll never have to run into the situation where we have a tragedy.
It was Richard Solomon reporting. Shue tells Richard that volunteers can start that training once the state approves the curriculum. Fall is on the way, and it has the Ohio Department of Health concerned. Hear what doctors say you need to do to stop the spread of COVID-19. Plus,
Sharon Frazier, Haley Scandalito.
Graduation usually means a new beginning. Up next, though, we're meeting women who are getting more than just a new beginning. They're getting a second chance at life.
It's a time when all of us will likely begin spending more of our time indoors.
Ohio leaders are getting ready for another season of learning to live with COVID-19. Right now, new boosters are available here in Ohio. We'll show you where you can get yours in just a minute. But first, who's eligible for them? Our Verified team is breaking it down for you. Here's Abby Marico.
Our sources are the FDA and the CDC, and a conversation with Dr. Stuart Ray of Johns Hopkins, who can get an additional booster. The CDC recommends an updated shot for adults and teens. Moderna's bivalent booster is approved for those age 18 and up, Pfizer's for those 12 and up. What if you've never gotten COVID-19 shots before? The bivalent booster is meant for now to work with the initial COVID-19 vaccine series, so get those shots first.
The current authorization for these bivalent vaccines is only for boosting.
However, this new shot replaces the earlier boosters, so even if you didn't get a follow-up 3rd or 4th shot before, then this is the booster for you. When is a good time to get the shot? It's FDA approved if it's been at least 2 months since your most recent COVID-19 vaccine, your primary vaccine series, or an earlier booster shot. Dr. Ray says it's hard to predict if or when another surge could come, and everyone's personal timeline may look a little different too.
I don't think any of us can be sure when our max risk is going to be. My general suggestion is if you're thinking you should get it, then you should probably get it.
What's the guidance if you've had COVID-19? The CDC's recommendations focus mostly on the timing of your last shot, but do say, quote, at a minimum, defer any COVID-19 vaccination, including bivalent booster vaccination, at least until recovery from the acute illness and when you're no longer isolating. you may consider giving it 3 months' time between infection and injection, the CDC adds.
For the reason that there's some research showing that if you don't wait 90 days, then your response to the vaccine may be somewhat blunted. You have good protection from a recent infection.
But because the natural immunity from infection is less reliable, getting a vaccine eventually is still recommended. With your Verify, I'm Abby Larico.
So let's get a look now at where Ohio stands when it comes to COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations. The Ohio Department of Health reported more than 21,000 new cases this past week, which is down more than 3,000 from the week before. And looking at hospitalizations now, those are down 71 from the previous week. The director of the Ohio Department of Health, Bruce Vanderhoff, says the new fall boosters help to fight off the Delta, Omicron, and new variants. But he says there is concern about whether the virus this winter will pop up again with more events in person and unmasked.
The chance for the flu to make a big comeback is very real. I would highly recommend fall flu shots and encourage everyone to stay up to date with their COVID-19 vaccine series. This is particularly important for Ohioans who are most vulnerable.
Columbus Public Health and Franklin County Public Health are offering the booster. Kroger is getting shipments to 18 Central Ohio locations. You will have to make an appointment for those. Giant Eagle also is getting the boosters, but you will not need to make an appointment at those stores. Well, Thursday was an emotional day at the Ohio State House. 12 women celebrated the start of a new chapter. They graduated from catch court after escaping human trafficking. Now, when these women are arrested, instead of being treated as criminals, the women are treated as victims and given the chance to transform their lives.
When I came to catch, I was so scared and alone, and I didn't know who to trust. But you guys held my hand, and that meant the world to me.
One by one, 12 women shared their pain.
If you would have told the girl that came into this treatment that she would be the woman standing in front of you today, she would have told you that you were crazy. She would have told you she didn't deserve it, that she wasn't good enough for it.
But they also shared their triumph over trauma.
I can't believe I'm standing up here today. I'm very emotional.
It was an emotional journey to get here, to be sure. But these women, who have seen the darkest of days, now get to shine.
My life was a mess. Drinking every day, crying, no family, alone, lost. It's a place I never want to be again. It starts a new chapter. It's the end of a lot of long work, but the beginning to the next chapter of a new beginning. It's just amazing. It showed me what I'm capable of doing if I don't give up, and it's opened a lot of doors, and it motivates me to continue moving forward.
Being a survivor of human trafficking, it's honestly, it's a blessing to be alive. It's a blessing to be where I'm at today.
I'm proud of her. I'm so proud of her, and I know she's going to be all right, and I don't have to die and worry about her now, because I know she's in the hands of God and she's going to do good.
It's absolutely emotional for me, because I've seen these women in their darkest days, and then to see them today celebrating their recovery, their family, their love for themselves. It truly is what gives me passion to keep doing this work. So it's very emotional.
12 women graduated, making it the second largest class in catch court history. Well, thank you all so much for being with us today. And remember, if it affects you, your family, and Ohio, we're here to make sure those accountable face the state.